Today we're going to be talking about the catch. First off, I want to thank you all for joining in, tuning in. I want to cover kind of my mission and why I am doing this in the first place. My mission is to really support and help develop community-focused paddler leaders. And so I like to be providing mindset, technique, and coaching related talks to support each of you with your goals. So thank you for tuning in. Today I'm really talking about the stroke and the stroke and breaking it down. Um, there's the setup, the catch, the pull, the exit, and then the recovery. Each of those parts is a very important part of the stroke, and the more fluid you can make it roll together, the more graceful, the more fluid the whole motion would be. And so we spend so many hours trying to perfect each part of this stroke, each piece of the stroke to then become stronger. So today I'm really just going to focus on talking about the setup and the catch. First off, why is it even important to have a good setup and a good catch? Oftentimes, many people will, well, many coaches also will say, reach more, reach more. And part of it is there's some truth to making sure your paddlers reach more. But oftentimes overreaching can lead to an inefficient stroke. Another reason why it's important is because if you don't have a strong catch, if you don't have a good setup, your paddlers will end up expending a lot of energy moving the body, right? They're gonna really try to go for it, but they're not moving the boat because they're spending all this effort moving their body around, but not actually connecting with the water. Without good setup and without a strong catch, it could lead to poor timing for your paddlers because now, if they're not fully buried, if they're not catching the full load of what they can get from the water, it's easy, right? Then they'll pull right through the water, and now they're going through the water too quickly, right? So that in a dragon boat or in an OC6, right, pulling through the water too fast will end up throwing off the timing of the boat. And that will also lead to poor boat blend because the mechanics are not there. So if someone is not setting up with a strong catch, we'll break this down later, but the body mechanics are not there. And if the body mechanics are not there, there's no power behind it. Sometimes they're going to be off on the timing, and now the boat isn't going to sink and gel together. Okay. Here's the setup. When I look at the setup, right, let's think about which parts of a setup there is. Here's me on an OC6 on a first off, I'm going to look at kind of body mechanics, body positioning. I'm going to look at the hinge, right? When I think about hinge, it's the forward lean, right? You see me leaning forward here, and you actually want to start the lean from your hips, okay? So when I think about that cue, I think of getting your chest over your quads when you lean over, and then also like getting your belly button to touch like your thighs a little bit, okay? So that's what I think of when I think of the hinge. At the setup, you also want good rotation, and I wrote that for rotation, I'm mostly looking at shoulders to be staggered, okay? Essentially, they shouldn't be square, right? Right now it's square. If you look at me from the profile view, right, this is square and this is staggered, okay? So you want to make sure the shoulders are staggered. And you take a look here, I'm going to be honest with you, and there's a reason that this isn't super staggered, okay? This I would critique myself as not having enough rotation, okay? But I'll show you why in the next slide, okay? But we're looking for shoulders to be staggered. And again, it starts from your hips, okay? When you think about rotation, don't just think about twisting your shoulders. It's about starting from the belly button, from the hip to start that rotation, okay? I think of this as the cue as show your back. So then I also think about your specifically, I want the outside shoulder forward and the inside shoulder back. Okay. Oftentimes people focus on just the outside shoulder forward, but they have a passive inside shoulder. When we cue them outside shoulder forward, inside shoulder back, okay, now you remember that they work together. Okay. And that's where the rotation comes from to show your back. Okay. Then we look at the top hand, right? I like to make sure the top hand is about a foot away from your head. Okay. And at the setup, I actually like it more around eye level. And you'll see me here, I'm not quite at eye level. It's a little high. Um, and I like the top hand to be extended but not locked out. Okay, some people lock it out. It's not as strong as if you keep a comfortable bend to it, but it should be strong. Okay, the top hand should ultimately be pretty comfortable based on your flexibility, right around, yeah, the eye level. Especially when you take the stroke, it should be at eye level. Right now, because it's the setup, I'm still clearing the water, is probably why it's a little high. On the bottom hand, you want the bottom hand to be similarly extended, but not locked out. So you can see how right here, you can see that that bottom hand is extended. Okay. Your foot position. Okay. Inside the canoe, which you can't see here, I like to have my outside foot extended. So it's in front of me and my inside foot tucked under. Okay. And I like to use this 730 pressure. And what that means is I have 70% of my effort. Sometimes it's 80-20. But the outside foot has about 70% of my energy pushing the boat forward. And the other 30% is keeping me, my foot is under me, kind of keeping me in place so that I can drive off of it. Okay. So I kind of use that percentage, rough percentage to pretty much keep both of my feet engaged while I'm taking the stroke, along with my hip, my top hand, my bottom hand, my hinge, and my rotation. Okay? All right, take a look at the catch here. Okay, if we look at the hinge, how's the hinge compared to my setup? And if you look at the rotation, how's the rotation on this catch? And hopefully you notice that for both the hinge and the rotation, that at the catch, when my paddle is in the water, that you see that my hinge is actually more pronounced and that my rotation is also more pronounced. Okay. And so this is important to note because oftentimes we look for, as coaches, we look for the setup position to be picture perfect, right? Which is looking, well, this setup would not be picture perfect, right? Like I could hinge more, I can rotate more. But the issue is that when we are ready at the setup out of the water, if we're already fully extended, fully rotated, there's no chance for you to get into the water and be more rotated and more hinged, more lean forward, right? And so if you take a look at this, right, as I get into the water, now that it's fully in the water, the paddle is fully in the water, I actually have more rotation and more lean to then drive power off of the stroke. You'll take a look at my top hand. My top hand is now closer to eye level, maybe forehead level. My bottom hand is still extended, but it's lower, closer to the water, much closer now. And in fact, I actually wish that my hand here was pinkies touching the water. Okay, so it could have been even deeper, in my opinion. All right. My outside foot is planted in front of me. In the Malolos, there's a foot pedal there, so I tend to pull the foot pedals as close as possible to me so that I can drive off of my front foot. And then my back foot is tucked under me so that I can drive forward. Okay. And this is the catch that I have. All right. And now we should not be focusing on the setup. I feel that the setup and the catch should be synonymous, as in we should take away the setup and pretty much go straight to the catch. We're taking away the need to set up with a lot of hinge and a lot of lean prior to actually getting into the catch because the most important part is when the paddle is in the water, not when it's in the air. When I think about finishing the stroke, as soon as you exit the stroke, the goal should be to get that bottom hand right into the water, set up right there for the catch, okay, right here. All right. So pretty much from the setup here, go straight to the catch. Pretty much skip this get setup en route to the catch. And the drill that we can use to help this, and I have this here, is that I call this from the setup to catch drill. Pretty much you go from your setup, which is here, into your catch, but it's an 80-100 drill. And what that means is that at the setup, you should be at 80% of your lean, 80% of your full rotation. And then when you go into the catch is when you should then be 100% rotated and 100% hinged. Oftentimes we actually do it the reverse, right? We say paddles up and everyone is at 100% reach, lean, and rotation. And then when you say go, they take the stroke, but they can't go any further. So then it ends up being 80% of reach, rotation, and hinge in the catch. So if you are catching at 80% efficiency at every stroke, you're missing 20% that you could be giving to the boat. So the goal really is to focus on addressing the water. And so after that 80-100 drill, where it's from the setup to the catch, if I were to set up here, right, I'm setting up, this is my setup. I'm not fully rotated. I'm not fully hinged yet. This is the setup. And then I'll say catch. And that's when you drive in with the rotation and the hinge. So you'll just repeat that motion from setup to catch, setup to catch, 80% effort, 80% extension, 100% extension into that catch. Okay. So after that drill, where it's just from the setup to the catch, next is going from your exit straight to your catch. And this is where we take away the setup part, right? Instead of going exit, paddles up, enter, then take the stroke. Now we're going straight from exit into the catch. And the goal here is to make that motion fluid so that you go right from your exit, which is right here, right? As soon as I exit here, I'm trying to get my top hand right into the position of the catch and get my bottom hand right to the water as well. Okay, so going from the recovery straight into the catch position here. Okay, I call it handshake with the water. And the goal here is that when you take that stroke, you want to make sure you're fully buried and you're getting your hand into the position first. You'll notice here on the outrigger here, I actually wish that this hand was actually closer to the water so that it can be shaking hands with the water. But the idea here is that you should get your full blade into the water. And in this case, it's fully in the water, but I would tell myself there, hey, you got to get deeper first before you take that stroke, because there's the deeper water you get, the more load you get off of that stroke. Okay. So when we think handshake with the water, you're looking at burying that hand first. As soon as that hand is buried, then you pull, then you derotate, then you sit up. Okay. Oftentimes people think they're getting fully buried, but they're actually still getting in. And as they're getting in, they already start sitting up. They already start derotating. And so the more you can be patient, if you ever hear your coaches say, be patient with the catch, that's where the patience is. You got to be patient to get fully buried in the water first and then exert power. Now, all of your strength and all of your power is going into that stroke. Okay. I have a paddling community that's on Skool.com. It's called Tech Lead Coaching. If you join on, there's a place for you to connect with each other. And then there's also courses that I have with the recorded tech talks here. And then there's also a monthly giveaway that you guys can win prizes. So feel free to check those out. If that was valuable to you, please drop a comment, drop a like, or share it to a friend that you think will benefit from this. Thank you so much for tuning in.